Today, we are in Tiburon, California, which is where we're staying for the next month and a half. I have my lovely wife, Lizzie, with me.
Hi, everyone.
And she's going to join me on the walk. And I'll get more into the area and all this later on and why I'm staying here. But right in the beginning, guys, I want to get into why people are still buying right now when clearly it's cheaper to rent pretty much everywhere. And in case you missed the video I did with Scott Walters, go check it out because we had an excellent conversation about real estate. And I kept asking Scott this as well because here in California, it's pretty much more expensive to buy basically everywhere. Not quite everywhere, but anywhere that's desirable to live, it's going to cost you 2 to 3 times more for a monthly payment to buy than it would to rent. Now, why would anybody do that? One of my subscribers, his name is Vangelis, he sent me this message on Instagram because he watched the video and he brought up a really good point that I want to share with you guys. And by the way, today's video is going to be full of a bunch of different anecdotes that you guys have sent me and real life examples of different things. And the entire video is going to be based on that. So I just want to thank everybody who's been sending me all these messages and all these questions because we're going to have a great time answering them and going through this video. Now here's what Vangelis said. He goes, "Hey Michael, I was just watching your latest video with Scott Walters. I will give you one more reason why people buy instead of rent. I would say the majority of people can't stop spending and wasting money. Cannot control themselves. It's like a drug. So if you were renting and saving money versus owning, you would not be saving at all. In fact, you would be wasting your spare cash on junk. So at least if you own a property, not all of your money is going to waste." Make sense? I know it sounds dumb, but it's reality. In today's world, there are so many temptations, opportunities, and availability of products and services combined with the digital setup. It has never been easier to spend money and people cannot resist. Now, I couldn't agree with Vangelis more on this one. I think that people will spend any extra dollar you give them right now. And it didn't always used to be that way. People's mindset about money, I think, has really evolved tremendously over the past 3 or 4 decades, especially with the introduction of credit cards and all these different lending products that allow people to access more money than they actually earn, which historically speaking was never really possible until recently. Now, for this same reason is why I think people that get these mortgage rate buy downs right now, you know, they get in with a home builder, or even if a traditional seller gives them a mortgage rate buy down, it's when you get into the property and your mortgage payments are going to be lower for the first 2 or 3 years of ownership. Could be a dangerous thing because when this happens, people find the way to spend the extra money, guys. And then when the full payment comes due 3 years later, they might not have the budget for it, especially with the rising cost of home ownership. So to the one point, I think it could be smart for somebody who has no self-control when it comes to saving money to pour it all into their home instead. However, you have to think about this, that even if it's more expensive to buy than it is to rent, and you're spending more on that because you're not a good saver, realize that a good chunk of your money is actually going to the bank straight in their pocket in the form of interest payments, especially in the beginning part of your loan. So you're not really saving much of anything. You're building a very minimal amount of equity, which is probably going to be erased by the drops in the housing market that we're already starting to see in the middle of this year and going into next year. So while there is some legitimacy to buying a house because you're a poor saver, it's not really a great excuse, if you ask me, to spend, say, $500 more a month on owning something than to rent something, or possibly even more. Now, if the numbers are neck and neck and maybe you're talking $150 more, $200 more to own than to rent, then in that case, I think it could be a good deal because, you know, it's pretty much the same and you're still going to be building some equity if you hold on to that property for a long period of time. And in the end, you'll probably be happy with your decision that you bought. But I just couldn't agree more with Vangelis's point here about people just spending the extra money, and that's why they choose to buy rather than rent, even though it can be cheaper to rent because they just don't have any money management skills, guys. And that is the biggest problem that our society in general is facing today, if you ask me. Now the next thing is Jennifer sent me this Instagram post from Dave Ramsey, okay? And here's what Dave Ramsey says about renting. So I kind of want to just push back against all of this and give my point of view. So he says short-term renting is not a problem. Long-term renting is a problem. The property that you're living in is going to go up in value in the next 10 years substantially, and the landlord is going to benefit from that, not you. Your largest line item in your budget is housing, and you have it stabilized it into the future when you buy. You're locking it in. By not locking it in, you're 100% guaranteed that your largest line item is going to go up when you're a permanent renter. So you're always paying more, and someone else is benefiting from the increase in value, not you. Now, Dave Ramsey is right about one thing, and that is the landlord's going to benefit from that property appreciation and not you. That part is 100% true. But here's the thing that nobody ever talks about, guys. And I saw this tweet on Twitter that this guy put. Look at what he says here. Nobody talks about how a $1 million mortgage costs you $1,217,000 in interest payments on top of the $1 million you have to pay for the house. So you pay $2,217,000 to borrow $1 million, but renting is throwing money away. And here's the screenshot of the mortgage calculator, and what do you notice here? He's using a 6.7% interest rate, which is actually low compared to today's standards now that most people are looking at 7.3%. So it could be even more than that. And that's what nobody ever wants to admit when it comes to buying. Like, you pay a tremendous amount of money in interest over the years. Yes, do you get to capture that appreciation on the property when it's time to sell? Absolutely. But your costs to own are not stabilized. In fact, they go up tremendously. I can attest to that. My wife can attest to that, because we are paying a ton of money extra to own our property now in terms of when we first bought it, okay? Because HOA fees go up, guys. Property taxes go up. Expenses around the house go up. Everything just goes up. Nothing ever goes down. And to say that when you're buying, you're stabilizing your cost of housing into the future is just a lie. It's not true. And guess what? When you're renting, you're not married to that property. And if your landlord does decide to raise your rent, you can move. You can move somewhere else cheaper. And we could have easily done that, except her business is based out of right where we live. So if it wasn't for that, we could have moved somewhere cheaper to save money instead of bought, but that's not the case. So what ends up happening is you have to make a decision for your own life, and that's what we did. But we could have easily found a cheaper rental somewhere else, further away from where we live now, and kept paying a low amount of rent versus buying a property, okay? So people think that your only option is to just buy a home to stabilize your housing costs, when in reality, you're locked into whatever the costs go up to with that property until you sell. When you're renting, you're not. I understand what Dave is trying to say here, because his mantra is to get out of debt and basically not be stuck financially, right? So he doesn't want you to have debt. He wants you to own your house outright, and he wants you to own your house more instead of renting. And that's because most people are not good at money management. But if you're a renter and you know how to manage your money well, you can propel yourself financially into the future much further than if you were a homeowner, if you make the right moves with that extra savings. But like Evangelist said earlier, most people just don't do that, and I agree. Now, I have more to say about this owning versus renting scenario that people are going to be pretty much debating until the end of time. But how about that Hurricane Hillary, guys? There has not been any sort of hurricane, tropical storm, anything like that hit California since 1939. And lo and behold, the year that the people from Miami are here, that's when it happens. And it looks like it's going to be pretty bad for Southern California in terms of the amount of rain they're going to get and the amount of problems that's going to cause. So I'm happy we're not there anymore, but I feel bad for everybody that is and is going to have to deal with that, because it's not going to look pretty. And we've been through a hurricane, and you know, it was a Category 4 storm, but it's not the same in Florida, guys. Like, we're used to getting all this rain and the flooding, but here in California, they're not. And I saw in the weather yesterday that they're saying that getting 5 inches of rain here is equivalent to us getting like over 20 inches of rain in Florida. So it's going to be a big deal. So if you're here in California, you're going to be facing this, just stay safe, guys. And I know it's going to affect people in Arizona and Nevada too. So be ready, and make sure you listen to what they say. don't go out, don't think it's going to be fun to record a mudslide or whatever and get swept away and get killed. Now, to add to this Dave Ramsey story about, keeping your costs fixed, check out this comment from one of my viewers, Jane. She put here, another issue to bring up. The cost of repairing a home has skyrocketed. Back in 2012, we got an estimate to replace all our windows in our house. It was $4,400. We just had all the windows replaced. The doors will be done at the end of the month. Over $21,000 in 2023, people. If even a regular homeowner, not an investor, fixes up his or her house for resale, all those repairs will be factored into the sales price, which is also true, and just goes to show you that your cost of living is not fixed when you're a homeowner, guys. When you're a renter, you're not going to pay that $21,000, and that's the point that Dave and everybody who says, renting is a waste of money is not bringing up. They're not talking about how you're going to spend double the property's value in interest. They're not talking about how you're going to spend all this money on repairs and improvements over the years. They just talk about the good side of it. And what I'm trying to do here on the channel is just warn you about all of it, because there are benefits to being a homeowner. I like the fact that I don't ever have to move again if I don't want to. I like that I can do anything with the house. I turned my office into an office/guitar room. Not worried about putting holes in the wall. I like not having to deal with the idiot landlord that we were dealing with prior to, leaving the rental. All that stuff is a plus, but it comes with its drawbacks as well in terms of unexpected expenses and all the problems we have to deal with there. How about that view, huh, guys? That's why we're over here. It's so beautiful in this area. We had the luxury of staying here a couple years ago with some friends that used to own a house here, and I just loved it so much we had to come back. And I realized we're not going to see any affordable houses in this area, and that's not really the point, guys. I'm here on vacation, enjoying the cooler weather. It's like 73 degrees outside, getting away from the Miami heat. You guys will see plenty of affordable houses when I'm on my way back to Florida. I'll be stopping in much cheaper cities along the way, just like I did on the way here, and you'll see what the rest of America's like, because I know that this is unrealistic, but I'm not here to be realistic. I'm here to not be hot. Now, here's another pushback against buying right now when it comes to people that enjoy renting, okay? I saw a story of a woman that owned a home for 7 years, and now she's a renter again. And these are the reasons that she likes being a renter instead. And she's not saying that owning a home is never a good thing, or that you should just rent for life. That's not really the idea. It's more like what jives with your lifestyle and what you're trying to achieve right now. Just like our goal was making sure my wife still is able to work. And that's why we bought, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So if we didn't do that, then we'd probably be forced out of where we live and she wouldn't have a job anymore. So that would suck, okay? And she does well for herself and she likes what she does. So it made sense for our lifestyle at the moment to make that purchase. Here's some of the things that this woman that owned the home for all these years likes better about renting. And one of them is what I just said. No maintenance costs or repair bills, okay? The fact that when something goes wrong, you can just call the landlord, have them come fix it, and that's it. No money out of pocket for you as the renter. The other thing, fixed housing costs, pushing back directly against Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey says that you need to own a home to have fixed housing costs. Well, this woman says that you can rent and have fixed housing costs, and I agree with that too. She signed a 2-year lease in New York, and she knows for sure that within those 2 years, her rent will not go up at all, not even a penny. Doesn't matter what inflation's doing, doesn't matter how much the insurance went up for the landlord or what goes wrong with the property, rent is fixed for 2 years. And then if it goes up from there and she's not happy with the increase, she can move. Flexibility is what that offers, and that is true freedom. And we think alike for sure, me and this woman, because the next thing she says is she likes being able to grow her wealth in other ways. Now, sure, you don't own that property where you're gaining the appreciation, but now you have a lot of extra money left over each month you can pour into your 401k or your index funds accounts, or say you're a real estate investor. That's what we did. We saved so much money renting that we were able to buy investment property, guys, a couple of them, and it worked out really well. and we made money from these properties. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we were owning at the time, because at the time, owning that similar place that we were living in literally would have cost double what our rent was. So we were able to save all that difference. We are not like the typical people that spend all that extra money that most people do. Like, we like to save it and invest it, because I don't want to work forever, and neither does my wife, you know? So it's one of those things where you have to make sacrifices today in order to have a better life tomorrow, and renting can actually really propel you into doing that into the future. And even though we didn't own the place that we lived in for a long time, we were able to capture all the appreciation and the rental income from the properties that we owned. Just like Scott says, you don't really need to own where you live, you just need to own something. We are the walking examples of that, and it worked out very well. And this woman in New York is definitely on the right path with that. And you don't have to invest in real estate, guys. Like she said, she invests in her 401k. She increased her contributions. She's investing more in index funds and things like that. And that's a good way to accumulate wealth in the future as well. So it doesn't really matter how you do it. It just matters that you save that cost difference if you are saving money renting versus owning something. And the other thing that she says she likes about being a renter is she has more flexibility on where she lives. If she gets tired of her neighborhood or the building that she's in, she can just leave. It's not that hard to do when you're just, you know, at the end of the lease. You just pack up and move, guys. The lease is over. She likes the ability to have more liquidity in her life, because when you own a home and most of your wealth is tied up in the house in the form of equity, the only way you can tap into that is by getting a HELOC or some other ridiculous lending product that puts a lien against your home, and if you don't pay, you're in big trouble. Versus when you're a renter, you can have your money tied up in savings or investment accounts, things like that, that are very liquid, that you can pull the money out tomorrow if you need it for anything. And I'm certainly not saying that owning real estate or buying a house is never a good idea, guys. Like, I realize people that bought 4 or 5 years ago are doing very well for themselves right now with all the equity they accumulated. And even if the housing market does crash 20 or 30%, they'll probably still be okay and still have some equity in the house because of how much things went up. And one of my viewers, Kenny, is a good example of that. Listen to what he said. He said, "Hey Mike, I'm single, I'm in Palm Beach, Florida. I bought 4 years ago. My townhouse price has almost doubled. Last spring, he pulled the equity and refinanced and went up to Port St. Lucie and was outbid 5 times, and he just gave up. Everything went up last year, HOA, insurance, car insurance, and his interest rate is 3.875%. He says, I'm thinking of renting to a traveling nurse for $800 a month in profit and moving to the Philippines to be a video nomad. My car is paid off and have no debt. Thanks for your videos. Everything you're talking about is my life. You're spot on." Now, thanks, Kenny, for being a fan of the channel, and I'm happy to hear about your success, man. And that's how it's done. People who are financially responsible and keep that extra money that they accumulate. In this case, this guy was able to roll his equity into savings, where he was able to pull the money out of the property, still cash flow it, and now have enough money to do something where he could move to the Philippines, and he'll probably rent something there and have a good life, guys. And so that's why owning real estate is important. It can propel you quite a bit ahead with your financial future, but only if you're smart about it. And that's why I'm warning people today, because if you're buying right now, that's probably not going to be the case, at least not for a very long time. I just showed you guys in yesterday's video, Redfin's already showing median home prices coming down as of July. That trend's going to continue throughout the rest of this year, and who knows what's going to happen next year, if it's going to follow the seasonal norms or not. It probably will. My guess, we're going to continue ending the next several years at a lower median home price than the year before. And so it's just kind of a slow and steady bleed out of the housing market that we're experiencing right now. And you're not going to be able to pull off something like what Kenny did, because he bought 4 years ago and the market conditions were completely different back then. It was pre-COVID. It was before all the stimulus that was pumped into the economy. And there's just no comparison to that run up in the market to what's going to be happening next. And I'll give you a perfect example of who I'm talking about right now and who's going to be facing these specific problems, okay? One of my viewers, I don't know your name because your screen name is a little bit odd, but they said this. They said, "We just sold a townhouse in Atlanta for $210K. at closing found out the buyer put under $500 of her own money into the deal. She got over $55K down payment assistance from 2 different HUD and first responder low-income worker programs. Only catch is she has to wait 5 years before the down payment assistance is completely forgivable. We decided to sell because we believe the market will crash and the townhouse will be worth under $100K soon. We bought it 7 years ago at auction for only $50K. And first of all, congratulations on making that excellent real estate deal. Buying the place for $50K 7 years ago and selling it for $210 today is a phenomenal return. So congratulations. But besides that, look at this thing from the buyer side, okay? This person has none of their own money in the deal. But the problem is, guys, they took $55K in down payment assistance from different government agencies. So what that means is when things turn upside down, not if, with this housing market, this buyer is going to be locked out, okay? They're not going to be able to sell the place without repaying that money, okay? So they have to repay it if they sell within this time frame of 5 years. They can't rent it out if they get into some sort of financial trouble. Otherwise, you have to repay those type of loans. And those are the caveats that people don't look at. Like, yeah, free money is great. It's nice to take advantage of getting a free handout from the government to be able to help you buy a home, but it comes with its consequences. And right now is probably one of the worst times to be doing that unless you know for sure that you can pay no matter what. If you know you can pay for the next 5 years, let's say you got the money in the bank or something like that, you'll be fine. But most people don't have that, guys. We know from an earlier video I did that literally 60-70% of people are paycheck to paycheck right now. So you're not going to be fooling me saying that you have 5 years of mortgage payments in the bank, because I know 99% of people don't have that. So when things turn upside down for this home buyer, and say if they go through a layoff or they lose their job, something happens where they can't make the payment, they're going to have to sell this property, okay, that they bought for $210K at a loss, so for less than they bought it for, and on top of that, have to pay back that $55K in down payment assistance. And say that they come out with a $70,000, $80,000 loss at closing and they don't have the money, well, guess what, guys? Now you're going to have all sorts of credit problems and bankruptcy problems. That can also be treated as income for you. So you can get a 1099 at the end of the year and say, well, you made an extra $80,000 this year because of the loss on this property, okay? So there's a lot of problems with people going into this. People just look at, oh, great, I can get into a house for only $500 and don't think past that. And this is what I'm pretty much sounding the warning signal for people who are doing this. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying assess your financial situation before you do, to make sure if the unexpected happens, you can make it through without having to, fire sale the property or put a renter in there and have to pay back that $55K. This was such a fun video to make because you guys are constantly sending me these really fascinating stories in the comments. The questions you guys ask me is literally gave me the fuel to make this video. So please keep stuff like this coming, and I will definitely keep doing this. Every once in a while, I like making videos all about what you guys are thinking and saying out there, and I think it really helps us stay in touch with each other, and it's one of my favorite things about making these videos. So keep all the good stuff coming, guys. Keep sending me stories in the email. Keep making comments, all your personal anecdotes, and I'll keep making all the videos I can in response to all that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next one to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.